The book of Genesis. Genesis is the first book of the Bible and forms the foundation for the entire biblical narrative. It focuses on the creation of the world, humanity's early history, the origins of sin, and God's covenant relationship with humanity through the patriarchs. Summary of the book of Genesis. Genesis 1, Creation of the world. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Over 6 days, he created light, sky, land, vegetation, celestial bodies, animals, and finally humanity. Humans, created in God's image, were given dominion over creation and commanded to multiply and fill the earth. On the seventh day, God rested, sanctifying it as holy. Message: God is the creator of all things, bringing order from chaos. Humanity, created in his image, has a special relationship with him and stewardship over creation. Genesis 2, Creation of humanity. The focus narrows to the creation of Adam and Eve. God places Adam in the Garden of Eden to work and care for it. Eve is created as Adam's companion, symbolizing the sanctity of marriage. Message: God desires intimate relationships with humanity and establishes the foundation of human community and partnership. Genesis 3, The Fall. Adam and Eve disobey God by eating from the forbidden tree, leading to their expulsion from Eden. Sin enters the world, bringing death and separation from God. Message: disobedience breaks fellowship with God, but his promise of redemption, Genesis 3:15, foreshadows a Savior. Genesis 4, Cain and Abel. Cain, in jealousy, murders his brother Abel. God confronts Cain and punishes him, but also protects him with a mark. Message: sin corrupts human relationships, yet God's justice and mercy coexist. Genesis 5, Genealogy from Adam to Noah. This chapter lists the descendants from Adam to Noah, emphasizing longevity and continuity. Message: God's plan progresses through generations despite human sin. Genesis 6-9, The Flood. God sees humanity's wickedness and decides to cleanse the earth through a flood, sparing only Noah, his family, and the animals aboard the ark. After the flood, God establishes a covenant, symbolized by a rainbow. Message: God's justice responds to sin, but his grace offers salvation and new beginnings. Genesis 10, The Table of Nations. This chapter details the nations descended from Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Message: God's sovereignty encompasses all nations, underscoring humanity's shared origin. Genesis 11, The Tower of Babel. Humanity's pride leads them to build a tower to heaven. God confuses their language, scattering them. Message: human pride leads to division, but God's plans cannot be thwarted. Genesis 12-25, Abraham's covenant. God calls Abram, promising land, descendants, and blessings. Despite challenges, Abraham's faith leads to the covenant, including the birth of Isaac, the child of promise. Message: God's covenant demonstrates his faithfulness and requires faith and obedience. Genesis 26-28, Isaac and Jacob. Isaac's life reflects God's faithfulness. Jacob, chosen over Esau, receives the covenant blessings despite his flaws. Message: God's sovereignty uses imperfect people to accomplish his purposes. Genesis 29-35, Jacob's family. Jacob's journey includes marriages, family struggles, and reconciliation with Esau. God reaffirms his covenant with Jacob, renaming him Israel. Message: God transforms lives and works through struggles to fulfill his promises. Genesis 36, Esau's descendants. This genealogy shows Esau's lineage and God's blessings outside the covenant line. Message: God's blessings extend beyond the chosen line, revealing his generosity. Genesis 37-50, Joseph's story. Joseph, sold into slavery, rises to power in Egypt and saves his family during a famine. His forgiveness and God's providence are central themes. Message: God's plans prevail through suffering, bringing reconciliation and salvation. Overview of Genesis. Genesis establishes foundational truths about God, humanity, sin, and redemption. It highlights God's sovereignty, justice, and grace, pointing to his ultimate plan of salvation through Jesus Christ. The book's themes of creation, covenant, and restoration underscore God's enduring relationship with his people and his faithfulness across generations. Conclusion: the book of Genesis is a profound narrative that lays the foundation for the entire biblical story. Through its chapters, several key messages and lessons emerge, providing insight into God's character, humanity's nature, and the overarching plan of redemption. God as the sovereign creator. Genesis begins with the assertion of God's authority as the creator of the universe. The orderly creation process highlights his power, wisdom, and intentionality. Humanity's unique creation in his image underscores the dignity and responsibility bestowed upon us. The tragic consequences of sin, the fall, Genesis 3, marks a turning point, introducing sin, death, and separation from God. The narrative of Cain and Abel, Genesis 4, further demonstrates sin's destructive impact on human relationships. Yet even in judgment, God's mercy is evident as he promises redemption and provides for humanity's needs. God's justice and grace. The flood narrative, Genesis 6 through 9, illustrates God's righteous judgment against widespread wickedness while offering salvation to the faithful. His covenant with Noah reassures humanity of his commitment to preserve creation and offer new beginnings. The call of faith and obedience. Through Abraham's story, Genesis 12 to 25, we learn about the importance of faith and obedience in God's promises. Despite Abraham's and Sarah's flaws, God's covenant faithfulness remains steadfast, emphasizing that his plans are not hindered by human imperfections. God's sovereign choice. The stories of Isaac, Jacob, and Esau, Genesis 26 to 35, highlight God's sovereignty in choosing who will carry forward his covenant. Jacob's transformation from a deceiver to the patriarch of Israel demonstrates God's ability to shape and use flawed individuals for his purposes. Providence amid suffering. Joseph's life, Genesis 37 to 50, exemplifies God's providential care. Despite betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment, Joseph rises to a position of power, ultimately saving his family and preserving God's covenant people. This narrative reinforces the truth that God can bring good out of evil and suffering. Unity of humanity, the genealogies, Genesis 5, 10, and 36, and the Tower of Babel, Genesis 11, remind us of humanity's shared origin and the dangers of pride and self-reliance. God's scattering of nations at Babel sets the stage for his plan to unite all people through his future redemptive work. In summary, Genesis reveals that God is a just and merciful creator who desires a relationship with humanity. It highlights the seriousness of sin and the need for redemption, while repeatedly demonstrating God's faithfulness to his promises. The book serves as a powerful reminder of God's sovereignty and the hope of restoration, setting the stage for the unfolding story of salvation through Jesus Christ.